G'day guys, Mac with the Outer Circle, and in the previous episode in this series we looked at the basically troops choices Legion-wide. This time out we're going to be looking at the Dreadnought choices Legion-wide. Now, unlike the last episode where I did talk about inductii for every Legion, but I didn't talk about specialist troops specific to each Legion, like Grey Stalkers, Grey Slayers, adherents, that kind of thing. This time out, I am going to include them because there's not an awful lot of units to discuss here. And, well, you can kind of see the board. So, same rules as last time. We have color coding to tell you if something is poor, adequate, good, or excellent. Now, first caveat, build your list however you want to build your list. But because we do consumer advocacy on this channel, and because I want to talk about list construction, it's important to understand what is going to give you the best bang for your buck. Yes, you can abuse this sort of video to its extreme to make the most overpowered unit or list, but that is not the intent. The intent is just to say, hey, if you have $150 to buy a model, which one of these is probably going to give you the most reward in your particular Legion if you are looking for performance. If you are looking for the rule of cool, then you don't need to watch this video. It's already summed up for you by what you find cool. So, to start with the actual guide up the top. So, the Legion Dreadnoughts are the top left. Then we go into the unique Legion Dreadnoughts in the middle, and then the special character Dreadnoughts over to the right. Now, they're broken up into three distinct categories because they all behave very differently from one another because of things like force organization chart, lack of talons, things like that. So, let's begin over on the far left. We have the Helical Targeting Array, Hammer of Wrath, Heavy Adamantic Deflector, and Ferromantic Deflector. This refers to our types of special rules that are very important towards Dreadnoughts, the things that basically are different from one Dreadnought to another, because they all have the Dreadnought subtype. Well, except Marigal, but again, we'll get to that. So, Helical Targeting Array. The Helical Targeting Array is going to give you Skyfire and Intercept, essentially. Very similar to an Augury Scanner. Contemptors can take it, Castraferrum can upgrade to it as well, and Deredeos come with it by default. So, this will allow them to shoot all of their regular weapons at aircraft and, again, free Interceptor reaction if they don't move. That is pretty handy. But you have to choose the correct weapons to put it on because it's an expensive upgrade. So be warned about that. The Leviathan misses out in this category. Instead, it has the option of, well, everyone else can take like Havoc Missile Launcher, for example. Instead of helical targeting, the Leviathan gets the Phosphex Discharger. Then we've got Hammer of Wrath, and the Leviathan has it, as does the Contemptor Incendius, and Cassian Dracos as well has it, I believe. Thing is, though, it's not very good. So even though it has an excellent 4 rating, it's not actually saying it's excellent 4. That number coding is just there to for the colorblind. It's just a yes or no criteria in these boxes, or a maybe. Then we have Heavy. Heavy means you're going to get reroll your regular armor save against blasts and template weapons. Honestly, doesn't come up very often for Dreadnoughts because there aren't an awful lot of blasts that are common these days that can actually hurt them. The one that really comes to mind is conversion beamers, fired across the table. Those kind of do it. Yes, Vindicators can actually instant kill things like Castraferrum Dreadnoughts, but they're not very common anymore because Games Workshop ensured to write them badly. Is what it is. So, yeah, Heavy is not that great, and keep in mind it's going to slow the unit down. They're going to have reduced movement compared to, say, Contemptor Dreadnought. They're going to have shorter charge distances, which is, it's going to cause them problems, and they're not going to be able to run, or pursue enemies in close combat. So there are issues that come with being heavy, some of which are mitigated by being a Dreadnought, but some of which are not, and it's important to understand that it is a limitation. Adamantic Deflector. Now, Adamantic Deflector is a special rule that prevents instant death from occurring. Now, it still occurs, but rather than being just instantly killed, you take D3 wounds, and you have a larger explosion radius when you eventually do die. The Ferromantic Deflector is its hillbilly redneck Alabama cousin. And the Ferromantic Deflector is you just cop a flat 3 wounds, and is therefore much worse. So when it comes to talking about our main 4 Dreadnoughts, again, we'll get to the others later, that's kind of a big deal. So, yeah. Anyway, that's the basics of what those special rules do. Now, for the units themselves, if you were going to buy a Dreadnought and you wanted the most bang for your buck in points to performance, the very best option you can pick is a Castraferrum Dreadnought. I know that's a bit shocking, it is a Legacies of the Age of Darkness unit, but it's incredibly cheap as an attack platform, especially if you're building it for ranged combat. The Castraferrum Dreadnought has some quirks, so where your regular sort of Contemptor Dreadnoughts are coming in with like basically Gravis everything, so getting lots and lots and lots of shots on all of their weapons. For some reason, one of the best weapons on the Contemptor Dreadnought, the Gravis Multi-Melter or Melter Cannon, is just a regular multi-melter on the Box Dreadnought, the Castraferrum. It's ridiculous, especially because for some reason it's about 4 times as expensive on the Castraferrum, so it's absurd. So if you really want to take a melter weapon, then it is not a good choice of Dreadnought. But if you want something like Gravis Bolt Cannons, Gravis Auto Cannons, the unique Gravis Missile Launcher, which, by the way, is a crapload of missile shots built into it. Very, very good ability. You can fire the Gravis Missile Launcher as a 48-inch Heavy 2 AP3 crack. You can take 1 or 2 of these missile launchers for 4 shots, if you like. Or you can fire a Strength 4 AP6 Heavy 1 Large Blast, 5 inches, but with pinning, which is actually pretty handy. Pinning is good for Dreadnoughts, especially for Dakka Dreadnoughts. You've got, obviously, Gravis Las Cannon, Gravis Plasma Cannon. Now, the old Flamestorm Cannon, which is pretty bad this edition, because they didn't need to remove AP3, but somebody got touched inappropriately by Flamer weapons at some point in the previous edition, so they nerfed them all into uselessness. The best 2 weapons to take on this Dreadnought are the Gravis Plasma Cannon and the Gravis Las Cannon, by a country mile. The next tier down from that will be your Gravis Missile Launcher and your Gravis Bolt Cannon. The Gravis Auto Cannon's not bad, but for 15 points, you're not really getting much. All you're doing is going up in 1 strength and getting rending over the Bolt Cannon, which for some reason has 48 inches range. It's a heavy bolter, but it has longer range. And you're paying 30 points for that privilege if you bet a pair of them. And you want pairs. So it becomes a case of, is that worth it, you know? Obviously, you've got the torso weapon options as well. Like the Havoc Launcher, you can take a Searchlight, which is, you know, useful. You've got the Helical Targeting Array, also useful. And you've got the Heavy Flamer Melter Gun, which can replace your Gravis Fist or Chain Fists inbuilt Combi Bolter. So, you can use these things for close combat. I just don't really recommend it. I don't think it's where they shine. I think they shine as shooting platforms because they are just super resilient and put out a lot of firepower. Gravis Plasma Cannon is one of the best plasma weapons still left in the game. And the reason for that is, well, for a start, it's a large blast. A large blast plasma in this edition is, well, it's not really that common because, like I say, they've all been nerfed into the ground. The other thing the Gravis Plasma Cannon has is the fact that it is still Strength 7 AP4, and it's only the 1 gets hot check that you're going to have to take for firing this massive blast weapon. Breaching 4+ is, you know, it's pretty good on this platform. I mean, you're coming in at 125 base points. You're only 165 points with 2 of those on this Dreadnought. And if you gave it a Helical Targeting Array, which is expensive, but you could be doing an Interceptor action with those 2 plasma cannons, which is very, very despicably tasty. Then we have the regular Contemptor Dreadnought, of course. Now, this one comes in second, and it's a tight race between them. Now, what the Contemptor offers over the rest is it's fast, okay? It moves further. It has higher strength and toughness, except, well, okay, the Deredeo ties it. Can't do anything with that strength, and kind of can do something with the toughness. The Leviathan does beat it, but the Leviathan is almost the price of 2 Contemptor Dreadnoughts. And it cannot put out the power, aggressiveness, whatever, of 2 Contemptor Dreadnoughts. So we're in a very funny situation here. Now, the regular Contemptor has Gravis everything. Gravis Power Fist, Gravis Chain Fist. The Gravis Power Fist is one of the most broken weapons in the game. 3 attacks on your regular Dreadnought. Then you're going up an attack for having your close combat weapon. And you can get up to 5 attacks if you have an extra fist. It's Strength 9, AP 2, and Brutal 3, and it's at initiative, which is pretty strong. I mean, like I say, 5 attacks on the charge, hitting at weapon skill 5. You're going to wound most things on 2s, and then you're going to have to make 3 saves against Strength 9. That will instant kill most things like Terminators. The downside is, things like Terminators will have ways of hurting you back. Thunder Hammers, Power Fists, Chain Fists. Be afraid of Melter Bombs, deathly afraid of Melter Bombs, because they are instant kill weapons against you. And we'll come back to those later, I'm sure. Salamanders. So keep that in the back of your mind. Now, it is worth taking 1 Gravis Power Fist and 1 Gravis Chain Fist if you think you're going to be fighting kind of 2 units. So the Gravis Power Fist is going to give you a ton of brutal 3 attacks at initiative. Really good for killing lots of infantry, but the Gravis Chain Fist is slightly stronger, strength 10. That can double out things like Galvorback, Custodes, battle-hardened units, such as, say, Morlocks or Huskarls, the Death Guard, Bodyguard units, for example, Death Shroud. It can kill those, which is handy. It doesn't have the Brutal, though, which really hampers it, because they just made the Gravis Power Fist so strong with that Brutal 3, it's hard to pass up. But the other thing the Gravis Chain Fist has is Murderous Strike. Now, this is, as I say, where it really comes in handy, is fighting other Dreadnoughts, because each wound you get through their save is going to do D3 wounds against most Dreadnoughts, or flat 3 against the Castraferrums. And if you use it against Automata, such as Vorax, Castellax, that sort of thing, it's just instant death. But again, you do need to roll that 5 to wound. But at only 5 points, it's not a bad choice. Then you've got the rest of the weapons, which is Gravis Bolt Cannon, Gravis Multi-Melter, Gravis Auto Cannon, Gravis Plasma Cannon, Conversion Beam Cannon, Volkite Dual Culverin, Gravis Las Cannon, Kiri's Assault Cannon. Which of these do you take? Well, the Gravis Bolt Cannon, the 48-inch ranged, 6-shot twin-winged heavy bolter, it's really, really good. And in fact, it's so good that I don't think that, again, like with the Castraferrum Box Dreadnought, that the Gravis Autocannon or the Kiri's Assault Cannon, or even the Volkite Dual Culverin, really shine so much more than it. The increased number of shots this edition means that the Gravis Bolt Cannon is on par with things like the Kiri's. I mean, last edition, the twin-linked heavy bolter on a Dreadnought was 3 shots, strength 5. Now it's 6 shots. That is the same number as the Kiri's Assault Cannon. The Kiri's Assault Cannon, you're getting half the range and 1 extra strength, and you gain rending, but you're paying 15 points for it. Is that worth it? I don't think so. Gravis Autocannon, same sort of thing, getting +2 strength and rending. But is that worth it for, again, 10 points? Maybe, maybe not. At least it has the range still. So, it's got that going for it. Then you've got the Volkite Dual Culverin. Now, the Volkite Dual Culverin, same number of shots, so that's not bad. Slightly reduced range, because it's a weird Volkite thing. They had to give them a random range, so they're 45 inches range. But not really especially better at killing Space Marines. I mean, the +1 strength is neat, and it will be better, but is it worth 15 points? Probably not. But if I know I'm going against someone who has toughness 3 units in bulk, or has very bad armor saves, well, instant killing things like Militia, Solar Auxilia, and the Deathly Great built in, then it becomes infinitely better. So it becomes a choice of which target are you facing. The Gravis Plasma Cannon, of course. Yep, that big pie plate, pretty good and cheap. It's half the points on this as it is on the box Dreadnought. That's worth it. Then we've got the Conversion Beam Cannon. Now, the Conversion Beam Cannon, I don't rate it on Dreadnoughts. I know some people really do because it is such a tough platform, but the thing is, you're paying all these points for the platform, not for the weapon, because it needs to be sitting there at range on the opposite side of the table, you know, hoping you've got line of sight to make the most use of it. And if you don't have it, you don't get the value of a heavy conversion beamer. Conversely, if you want to use up a slot and you've got something like Predator battle tanks, you can get a lot of them. They're, 70, 75 points cheaper than a Contemptor Dreadnought, and they can take a heavy conversion beam cannon, which is the large blast template instead of the small one. Well, why wouldn't I just want that same but better weapon on that tank? Especially because, Predators aren't anywhere near as tough a platform to kill, but with that range of weapon, you can put it across the other side of the table and it'll be fine, you know? So I don't really think the Conversion Beam Cannon is worth it. So then we fall into our last two weapons, the Gravis Las Cannon and the Gravis Melter Cannon. Both are fantastic. I don't know why the Gravis Melter Cannon is as strong as it is. Multi-Melter's got Twin Linked this edition. What was wrong with it being a 2-shot melter weapon? Well, no, it couldn't just be that. It's 2 shots and Twin Linked, and it's only a 5-point upgrade. This is obviously incorrect because you think you are paying, that's the same points that you pay. In fact, you pay 10 points, twice that, for the Gravis Autocannon, and that's 1 more shot, 1 less strength, 3 less AP, and you're fishing for rending. What the hell? It's got to be incorrect, but that is the points they've given it. It should be 25 points as an upgrade, because that is ridiculously good. And the Gravis Las Cannon, of course, it's a 2-shot Las Cannon. What do you expect? It's fantastic. So the most common loadout I've tended to notice is Gravis Melter Cannon, Gravis Power Fist, and a Melter Gun in the Gravis Power Fist. And that seems to be how people run their Contemptor Dreadnoughts. Again, it's not the rule that everyone is doing this. It's just that's the most common I've witnessed because it is so cheap and so good for what you get. Then moving on from the Contemptor Dreadnought, we get into Leviathan territory. So the Leviathan category is a bit of a weird one because the Leviathan was really, really strong last edition. But as I said, for some reason, they decided that it needed to be nerfed softly, and with the buffs that have been done to the Contemptor Dreadnought, it really hurts it now, because the Contemptor Dreadnought, so many of its weapons became Gravis versions of those weapons. They doubled their firepower on nearly every weapon, okay? And a lot of them are twin-linked as well. The Leviathan, and also the Deredeo, when we get to it, did not have that happen to them. For some reason, that balance change didn't occur on the other Dreadnoughts, and that's why these units suck. And that is the truth. They suck comparatively. They're good units in the game. I think they're really good units, in fact. But compared to a Contemptor Dreadnought, they just cannot keep up, let alone with the Castraferrum, if you're going on a points-for-points basis. So, the Legion Leviathan, you have the Siege Core and the Siege Drill. They're essentially the same as the Gravis Power Fist, Gravis Chain Fist. Difference is that the Siege Core is Strength 10 Brutal 3 instead of Strength 9 Brutal 3. So it's only 1 strength better. 1 strength better. It's silly, it shouldn't be. It is massive and on a much larger platform, but that's just how they wrote it. The core, though, is Strength 12, which is pretty damn respectable, because that can kill a lot of stuff. Instant killing, toughness 6 stuff. That includes box Dreadnoughts, by the way, Castraferrums. It's only 5 points, and it's Armor Bane. So it doesn't have Murderous Strike, but Strength 12 is almost Murderous Strike in a way, because that's so high a strength. And at 5 points, it's pretty good. And it's also the cheapest way to run a Leviathan, because every upgrade for weaponry costs points on the Leviathan when it comes to getting ranged attacks. Again, the Contemptor Dreadnought and the Castraferrum don't need to do that. They can straight away take a Gravis Heavy Bolter battery, and for some reason, that's free. Not so on the Leviathan. So the first range weapon is the Leviathan Storm Cannon. This is going to be the default. Heavy 6, 24-inch range weapon, Strength 7, AP 4, Rending 5 plus Thunder. 10 points. Pretty cheap. Now, Heavy 6, 24 inches range. That is twice the shots of the Gravis autocannon on the Contemptor, but half the range. And the rending is a little bit improved, and Sunder. That's not bad, but you've got to get close. 24 inches, that's sort of second, third turn of the game. Your Dreadnought's actually starting to do things. You're probably not going to get good shots with it in the first turn. Strength 7, of course, unlike Strength 8, which I think it was last edition, you can't instant kill Marines. And with all the amount of 2 wound units this edition, the fact you don't have AP3, in fact, this one was Strength 7 AP3 last edition, and it was Strength 8 on the Anvilus autocannons on the Deredeo last edition. That's where I'm going to put my money. It just can't kill Marines, unfortunately. Good at popping rhinos, it can do the occasional wound here and there. It can hurt automata, light vehicles, whatever. But yeah, not great. Next weapon is the Gravflux Bombard. Now, this was the go-to last edition because it was just a Terminator killer, and it was always marketed as a vehicle killer. And last edition, you rolled 3d6 for armor penetration, and that was what you got. Now, the average roll on 3d6 was 11. So it was pretty good at killing rhinos. It's silly. This edition, they've upped that to 4d6, which is good, and it does an extra hull point for every hull point it causes. The problem is you're never going to get an explodes result. Even if your average roll is going to be, 14 or 15 on... 14 on 4d6, because that's just the average. You're going to pen a lot of things. You're going to glance, Land Raiders, Spartans, that sort of thing. Provided, of course, they don't have a flare shield, because... Well, how would it work against flare shield? I'm not sure. Well, the interaction is there, because it is a template, but anyway. But with Heavy 1, 18 inches range, only being AP4, you're not going to get an explodes result. You're probably not going to roll anything decent on the damage table. So many units have reinforced this edition, so you're not going to cause a lot of stunning. It'll just be a lot of shaken results. A lot of those will get ignored as well. So it's really not doing a lot. And against infantry, they roll a 2d6 strength test, and if they fail it, they just take an AP4 wound, which is absolutely useless. I mean, it should just be if you roll your strength test and fail, you just take a wound, no armor saves, because you've been crushed into a ball on the ground of fleshy lump. It's a weird weapon, the Gravflux Bombard. Looks cool, don't take it. Then we get the Cyclonic Melter Lance. Now, this is my pick for the unit, because although you have Volkites built into your chest, you've got Melter Guns built into your hands, and yeah, you are trading your close combat potential to take Cyclonic Melter Lances. 1 or 2 of them, and they are expensive at 20 points each, but Heavy 4, 18 inches range, Strength 8, AP1, Armor Bane. I mean, chances are you're going to do many more hull points of damage than the Gravflux Bombard for a start, but better yet, these are Terminator killers. And the biggest threat to Dreadnoughts is Thunderhammer-equipped Cataphracti Terminators, because they can take a hit and they can dish it out, especially command squads, especially characters, and of course other Dreadnoughts. Cyclonic Melter Lance, being able to fire a ton of Strength 8 AP1 Armor Bane shots, which are triggering at 9 inches, the Armor Bane, is really, really good. And if you've got a Leviathan Dreadnought with 2 Cyclonic Melter Lances, someone attacks you and you return fire reaction on them, holy cow, is that a devastating amount of firepower. And if it is something like an Iron Warriors one using their advanced reaction where they'll fire double at you, then prepare for a world of pain, because you'll be taking 16 Strength 8 AP1 Ballistic Skill 5 shots back. Very nasty weapon. The last weapon on it is, I think it's a must include. That's the Phosphex Discharger. It was a fun weapon last edition. It fired, I think it was 3 small blasts, and it was 1 use only. Now you can use it all the time. Heavy 1, 18 inches range, so 3 times the range of last edition. I think it was only 6 inches range last time. Strength 5, AP2, blast 3 inches. So a blast in this edition that's actually AP2. I didn't think it was possible, because blast is supposed to be shit this edition. They made one good blast weapon, and it's on a Dreadnought as an optional piece of war gear. The mind boggles. Anyway, crawling fire, lingering death because it's a phosphex weapon, and poisoned 3+. So you think that it would be good against Dreadnoughts because of the AP2 and the poison, but the thing is, poison Fleshbane, you have to re-roll their to wound rolls against Dreadnoughts. It's not really that good. It's an infantry killer, okay? So yeah, Leviathan Dreadnoughts, that's the sort of state they're in. And then lastly, we get to the Deredeo. Now the Deredeo Dreadnought, this is in a weird spot because you come with a helical targeting array automatically, an ambulas autocannon battery, which is it's essentially one extra shot over your Gravis autocannon. It's nothing to write home about, but it runs on a 5 and it's Sunder, so okay, it's not terrible. But last edition, it could insta-kill Marines. So even if it didn't have the greatest AP value, well, at least if it did get through, it got through. This edition, not so much. And it does suffer from that problem that it had last edition, in that it can't instant-kill flyers because you can't roll an explodes result. So all you can do is, fish for hull points, basically. It comes with a twin-linked heavy bolter, which you can change to a twin-linked heavy flamer for some reason underneath the torso. I don't really advise this. I think it's a poor choice to take the heavy flamer because it's only a single heavy flamer. At least 2 of them, you might be able to do a decent Overwatch or something, but no. And it comes with the Boreas air defense missiles, which are a bit of a weird weapon. They're kind of like melter guns equivalent in firepower, but a missile, so 48 inches range, 1 use only weapon. So you can fire 4 of them in the game. I would rather they can fire independently, which is good, but I would rather just upgrade to the Aeolus, the Garlic Aeoli air defense missile launcher, or the missile launcher it's just called now. Used to be able to independently shoot it around corners and stuff. You can't do that now. It's got to shoot the same target as the rest of the Dreadnought, but still a really good weapon. Has guided fire, so I'm pretty sure it doesn't even need line of sight, which is, handy. Heavy 3, pinning, strength 6 AP3, and 60 inches range. It's a Marine killer. Yep, if they've got a positive carry, they've got better chances against it, but it is a Marine killer, and it gives you a good chance to get a pinning, which is awesome. Then you've got the arm weapons. So I spoke about the autocannon, but there's a couple of other options. We have the Volkite option, which is terrible, in my opinion, so I never take it. And you've got the plasma type. So the Volkite Falconet, I believe it is, Heavy 8, Delpha Great, Twin Linked, and Pinning. Pinning's nice. Heavy 8's not bad, but remember, we are in a game where Contemptor Dreadnoughts exist, and a Contemptor with 2 Volkites is going to be coming in a good 30 points cheaper, and is going to have 4 more shots. Is that worth more than Pinning? It depends. You're paying a lot of points for it. Is that worth 30 points? I don't know. I don't think so, personally. And then, of course, we have the last option for it, which is a plasma option. Or actually, it's the second last. There's one more. So the plasma option we have is actually not too bad this edition. Last edition, it was okay-ish, right? The plasma carronade. This edition, it's got 2 firing modes. Heavy 6, breaching 4+, 36 inches range. That's not gets hot. That's not bad. And then we have the maximal fire mode. Go to heavy 1, rending 4+, gets hot, but large blast. Now, if it was heavy 1 shot, that would be bad. But the large blast and rending 4+, and strength 8? Yeah, that's a tasty beverage. That will kill Marines. And we have to keep using Marines here because they are the most common thing you're going to come across on the battlefield. Yes, Custodes exist. Yes, Solar Auxiliary exist. Yes, Knights exist. But Marines are going to be the most common thing, holding on to objectives and getting in your way as a Dreadnought. So we use those as sort of the metric to measure against. And that weapon is really good. The last weapon option it has is a las cannon. And not just a las cannon, it's actually one of the strongest las cannons in the game. The Arachnus Heavy las cannon. And that's going to give you Heavy 2 with Sunder, Exoshock 5+, so if you get a penetrating hit, you roll a d6, on a 5, you're going to cause another hit. And it's twin-linked as well, and Strength 10 AP2. It doesn't have enough shots to wipe out other Dreadnoughts, but things like, Galvorback, a problem unit for people, or Huskarls, Custodes, you can instant kill those guys, the Toughness 5 multi-wound guys. That's where it really shines. And against vehicles, of course, this thing can kill Spartans from the front. It is really, really strong. I think the best loadouts for this is either the Plasma or the Las option, and the Olos defense missile or the anti-everything missile. It's just a good option for you. So that takes us through the Deredeo. Now let's get into the actual legions themselves, because that's an awful lot of talk. And we filled our first half an hour basically before we even got to the legions, but we need to give a rundown on what the weapons are and why they suck. And in many cases, the reason weapons aren't good is because something else is there that offers almost identical performance for significantly reduced points. And you think about it, if you have 3 Dreadnoughts and you save 30 points on each of those Dreadnoughts, you've got enough points to buy something pretty useful. If you can save more than 30 points, say you can save 40 or 50 points, that could buy you another Dreadnought. So, it's a significant difference in what you can achieve here. Now, when it comes to all of these options, what I've had to do is basically go through and go, okay, how does the Legion sync up with the Dreadnought? Okay, so we know that they're going to be strong in every one of these Legions, okay? If I was comparing these and these Dreadnoughts were, listed up against tactical squads on this chart, well, tactical squads are not going to look very good next to a Dreadnought, are they? For sheer performance of killability and survivability and all that. No, I assess on basically 2 criteria. Do you benefit from your Legion trait? Do you benefit from your Legion war gear? If you can tick both of those boxes, you're going straight to blue, okay? Unless you have a particularly powerful Legion trait. If you only tick one of those boxes, you're probably only going to green level. So everyone is starting at the adequate level, which I think is fair. To go down to poor, you have to really be failing as a Dreadnought. So, Dark Angels. Dark Angels are wing-based. And again, the problem with the wings of the Dark Angels is they're not all going to benefit a Dreadnought to the same extent as one another. And it's a real problem for Dreadnoughts, because the wings just don't offer enough of a buff to really say that, yes, my Dreadnought is just so improved from being a Dark Angels Dreadnought that no other Dreadnought in the game can compete with it in what it does uniquely. You could take Firewing. You're going to get +1 to wound when attacking a unit that contains an independent character, for example. Okay, that's good. What if there is no independent character to target with your Dreadnought? What if they're inside a transport? As far as I know, it doesn't confer to the transport independent character because it's not their unit. So it becomes functionless. And if you're not character chasing, if it's a Deredeo whose job is air defense, for example, then you're going to have problems. What if that character is on the opposite side of the table and you're using Leviathan, whose longest range weapon is 24 inches? Ooh, yeah, okay. Firewing's not looking so great now. What if you use Iron Wing? Well, okay. You're going to get to reroll to hit rolls for 1 when you target an enemy model with the vehicle unit type. Well, that's pretty handy if you're, maybe a Deredeo or a Castraferrum rocking las cannons shooting at tanks. Okay, good. Except Deredeo is going to be twin-linked already, so that's going to get no benefit. So it's really just the Castraferrum that's going to get a benefit. And your Ballistic Skill 5, 4 shots. Yeah, okay, it's pretty much guaranteeing you're going to get that extra hit. Stormwing unit type. +1 to hit when part of a shooting attack with a bolter, combi bolter, or bolt pistol. Well, unless you're shooting the combi bolters out of your hands, that's not very useful, is it now? The Deathwing subtype, getting a bonus when you're using a sword. Well, unless you model them for advantage by giving them all swords, I think it would be pretty hard to claim that they're armed with a sword and therefore they're trained knights, and yeah, let's not be stupid about it. Dreadwing, they reduce the strength of all attacks made against them with flame, plasma, Volkite, and Phosphex weapons. For some reason, though, not melter weapons. So it's like a weird version of the Salamander's trait. It's not particularly great. And the Poisoned X special roll is already not doing great against them, so it doesn't really boost that. So, I mean, yeah, I guess if you're getting shot with a lot of plasma and Volkite, but people don't shoot Dreadnoughts with that because they know it's just ineffectual at the best of times. So I don't need to worry about that. And then the Ravenwing unit type. Well, +1 to the distance move when you run. Yeah. The Contemptor is the only one that can run. So, yeah. I mean, and none of these are particularly great for a Dreadnought. So they're adequate for the Legion. Hence, yellow across the board. But they're not boosted by such a degree. And there is, of course, a catch-22 here, which Dark Angels players will be very familiar with, which is they do not have good Rites of War. In fact, they have amongst the worst Rites of War in all of 30k. And the Rites of War lock you into taking certain Hexagamaton unit subtypes. That means that you might not be able to take your Dreadnoughts and give them an actually functional unit subtype. So overall, the Dark Angels are adequate. Then we go to the Emperor's Children. The Emperor's Children, the Contemptor and the Leviathan, the two most likely to get into close combat and most likely to benefit from the +1 initiative, they're going up a tier. They're going up to a 3. So they're going to green from yellow. So good for them. Okay, yes, you can equip a Castraferrum. +1 initiative is not really making a difference here. And to be honest, most of the time that you're using one of these Dreadnoughts, the +1 initiative is not going to make a difference unless you are fighting a Paragon Blade armed character, maybe, or another Dreadnought. Really, because the things that are going to hurt you, the things that are going to cause you trouble, Marines with Thunderhammers, they're striking last in close combat. And yeah, so Leviathan Contemptor, it is a boost to them. It is a significant boost if they're fighting a like-for-like unit, which is really strong. So they do go up a tier, but that is it. Then we get to the Iron Warriors. Now, the Iron Warriors are going to get a boost of +1 strength against all the units your Dreadnoughts are built for fighting. Other Dreadnoughts, tanks, automata. You don't get a bonus against infantry, but again, we've discussed, none of their weapons need a bonus against infantry. Dreadnoughts are just great to begin with. But the real bonus here is for the Castraferrum and the Deredeo, because although the Contemptor and the Castraferrum are pretty much on par for damage output as Iron Warriors, the Castraferrum is a much cheaper platform, 50 points cheaper really, or nearly. And when you're taking them usually with an anti-tank loadout, probably the twin las cannons. I'd pretty much see no other choices made, but even the twin missile launchers are pretty good. That makes them really devastating. And you'll notice that we've actually gone all the way up to blue, not just green. That's because you could upgrade the weapons on these guys to be shrapnel rounds, and shrapnel are going to lose armor penetration, but that doesn't matter when you fight Marines. Because, well, AP4 isn't going to instant kill them, so who cares if you go to AP6? It was never going to boost you when it comes to damaging a vehicle. There is only time that AP4 matters is when you're fighting scouts, which are rare as hen's teeth, or when you go and fight militia or Solar Auxilia, and everything can kill them anyway. No, shrapnel rounds are amazing because they are pinning. So if you have Contemptors, Leviathans, well, actually, it's going to be Contemptors, it's going to be Castraferrums, and it's going to be Deredeos with their little belly-mounted heavy bolter. They're going to be able to get pinning ammunition, and even the combi bolters on the Contemptor in its hands can be pinning if you arm it with twin fists. So there's a lot you can do with these units. You can do, strength 9 multi-melters, strength 10 las cannons, strength 11 Anvilus las cannons on the Deredeo, like really, really good stuff. And of course, things like the -1 strength on weapons that usually save something like the Iron Hands, all of a sudden they're no longer immune to some of those attacks. Again, depends. You're still going to wound basically their Dreadnoughts on 2s, when everyone else is going to go to wounding them on 3s, for example, because the -1 strength on, say, your Gravis Las Cannons. So really good. Then we get to the White Scars. The +1 movement, well, Contemptor's pretty fast anyway, so it doesn't really give it a bonus there. But the Leviathan's pretty slow, so the +1 movement is actually helpful, especially because it can't run. So I think that's the only one that really gets boosted from the Legion, and there is no Legion war gear that a Dreadnought can take that's really worthwhile. So that's it. There's not much to say about the White Scars. Their Legion trait is so simple. Maneuverability is king, but it needs a really, really good player to make the most of additional movement. That's your 4D chess, okay, of Horus Heresy. And only the very best players will pull the results they need out of that movement, because they know how to move their stuff around, how to get into range, how to get out of range most effectively. If you can't do that, your White Scars are just going to mistreat you in general. Space Wolves. Now, the Space Wolves bonuses, they're not too shabby, because the Space Wolves are actually a close combat force, so you're going to see all the buffs for the Space Wolves revolving around that. But in general, their bestial savagery is good to everyone. +1 weapon skill on a turn when they charge. Yeah, that's good. That's going to mean that the weapon skill 5 units are going to go from hitting you on 4s, hitting you equally, to hitting you on 5s, and you're going to hit them on 3s. So it's a significant damage boost, and up against really weak units, something weapon skill, say 2, for example, or 3, they've got no chance in hell of hurting you now. Really, really good ability, and it even puts you on par with things like Praetors. The Deredeo, of course, it can only kick enemies to death, so the fact that it's got a bonus when it's got 2 attacks, yeah. At strength 7, yeah, it's screwed regardless. Imperial Fists. Now, Imperial Fists are actually weaker here, so when we looked at all their infantry, and when we've assessed the unit for strength in general on this channel, I've pointed out how they are by far the most powerful Legion numerous times, and I think I've backed it with the data. On Dreadnoughts, not so much, because the +1 to hit that they get on all bolt and auto weapons, although they're the most common weapon army-wide, and the default weapons of all these guys pretty much are bolt and auto weapons, they're all ballistic skill 5. It doesn't give you ballistic skill 6, so you don't get to roll a 2+ followed by a 6+. It just caps out at the 2. So, not very good. It will help you with snap shooting against aircraft, but again, you have helical targeting arrays built in, so it's not a huge boost there. You know, Deredeo especially is not getting boosted by this. And then it becomes a sort of case of, well, okay, what do they lack that they could be boosted by? And I think the big thing for them is war gear, because they have something that very few legions actually have access to, which is 20 points you can upgrade to an assault cannon to replace a heavy flamer. This doesn't affect the Deredeo because it's a twin-linked heavy flamer under the torso. Yes, it's stupid, but that's rules as written. But the Leviathan can have the twin assault cannons in the chest. This actually gives a significantly increased amount of firepower, albeit at a cost of 40 points, to the Leviathan. And with the assault cannons also going into the fists of a Contemptor Dreadnought, you can have a Contemptor Dreadnought which is armed for close combat, so maximum close combat attacks with Chain Fist, Power Fist, and both of those weapons have an assault cannon in them, so you're still putting out 8 strength 6 AP4 rending 6+ shots at 24 inches. That's amazing, and the only time it's really going to be a problem is when you're overwatching, because when you do an overwatch reaction, it gets hot. Still, really good. And the Iliastus assault cannon nipple guns on the Contemptor are a clutch snap fire weapon as well, because of the +1 to hit. You'll hit on 5s against aircraft and such, so really, really strong. But that's a niche use, and you're paying a lot of points for it, so again, can't really go too high. Then we get to the Night Lords. Now, the Night Lords, they have the best Dreadnoughts in the game. Why is that? Well, a combination of two things. First, Legion trait buffing them with the ability to outnumber and getting those reduced to wound rolls is very handy on their weapons. Okay, cool. That's fine. But what really makes them amazing, it's night vision. The fact that you can pay 15 points to put night vision onto them, you are ignoring all of those negatives that would normally cause you problems in 5 out of 6 games because Night Fight is just ubiquitous this edition. Especially because if you're playing Night Lords, most people run Terror Assault. Again, not everyone, but most that I've seen run Terror Assault, and therefore they're running Night Fight. They know they're going to have it. So why cripple yourself by not giving them upgrades? And there are ways of giving them fear as well on top of this. So if you have fear and you have pinning weapons and you can see them and they can't see you to shoot back, that is a massive game changer. And I think it really buffs all of the Dakar Night Lords. The Leviathan, though, not so much, because all of its weapons are such high strength in both combat and outside of combat. You're really not going to see any boosts from anything it does, really. So the Leviathan's actually its weakest option, but I think all of the other Dreadnoughts really benefit in the Night Lords. Then Blood Angels. Blood Angels, +1 to wound in melee. Your strength 9. Most Dreadnoughts are fighting against toughness 7 or less units. Yeah, that's useless. That's 2s to wound, and you can't improve above a 2 to wound. So the Legion trait is good. I've put it as good because you might fight something that is toughness higher than what you have to deal with. Maybe you're fighting a Leviathan with a Contemptor or something like that. Okay, that makes them good because you're going to be wounding them a lot more easily than they will wound you, being a like-for-like exchange. Okay, fine. The Deredeo especially, though, how does it do anything? In fact, I'm surprised I didn't put it as a 1 because it really does nothing for the poor Deredeo. So Blood Angels, not great, but it does have its moments, especially if they're gun-armed. Okay, if they are armed for shooting and do get into melee, it is going to be a boost. Iron Hands. You have -1 strength to the enemy shooting against you. Do I really need to explain any further what makes these guys so amazing? Contemptors and Leviathans get to close down the range quicker. The Castraferrum and the Deredeo are both much more resilient as shooting platforms. Of course, the way these bonuses go, strength... So why do I go a 4, a blue category for a Contemptor and a Leviathan, but not for the Castraferrum? It's the same buff. Well, it's because the sum total of that means that a Castraferrum is still going to get wounded by bolt guns. A Contemptor Dreadnought is not. That is huge because strength 4 is the most common strength in shooting in the game. So that is a significant difference between them, and that is why out of all of these units, it's the only one that gets that deduction. Now the other thing is there are weapons which are strength 12, strength 14 out there. In fact, a great many of them. And the Iron Hands become functionally immune to them from the instant death standpoint. They're going to take a single wound. Well, that dramatically changes how much damage you are going to take. Instead of taking 3 wounds from being shelled by, a Vindicator on your Castraferrum, you can take 1. Okay? If you get shot with a Volcano Cannon, then your Contemptor is only going to take 1. Other legions are going to take D3. So it is a huge force multiplier, especially for the Iron Hands, and it makes them unique here. And that legion trait is just so strong and so hard to overcome, they have to go up. Alright, going on from there, we get to the World Eaters. Now, the World Eaters, +1 attack, helps the Contemptor, and it helps the Leviathan a lot, because with their brutal 3 attacks, really good. Yeah, okay, Castraferrum can get it as well, but again, it's slow, reduced toughness, reduced number of attacks, whatever it may be, it's nowhere near as good. It's just okay. So the force multiplier is biggest for these 2 units, does virtually nothing for the Deredeo, and it's almost like a 2.5 for the Castraferrum. Again, it's a shooting platform. It's not a close combat melee platform. It's Initiative 2. You know, it's not great. So that's where we're sitting at for the World Eaters. And unfortunately, no unique good Legion war gear that's going to sync up with them. And then the Ultramarines. It's the Ultramarines. The big thing for them is if you shoot a unit with another Legion as a starting Ultramarines unit, you're essentially giving a output damage boost. It's really good for your shooting units because they're going to either cause it to happen or benefit directly from it in some way. So really good for them. Of course, they're not going to benefit from it anywhere near as much as other units in your army, but it's a solid choice. If you use a Deredeo to shoot an enemy Spartan, and then you're buffing a Legion heavy support squad with las cannons that are now going to shoot the same Spartan, that's pretty good. They sync in really well with the Legion trait. Of course, the Leviathan having really, really short range and probably wanting to be in close combat, I'm guessing, most of the time. That's how I'm treating it, because that's the cheapest option. Well, it doesn't offer as much of a bonus, because you don't want to be shooting all the enemy units to death and leaving it just sitting there in the open like a fool, waiting to get shot by the enemy in return. Then the Death Guard. Death Guard have a buff to move through cover, and that's handy for the Contemptor and the Leviathan to close the distance, and does nothing for the Deredeo and probably nothing for the Castraferrum. So yeah, the fact that they count as stationary doesn't really affect them, so because they're basically relentless, because they're a Dreadnought unit type, amongst other things, yeah. Then the Thousand Suns. Oh boy. There are 0 buffs for Dreadnoughts, and even when it comes to Legion war gear, the only war gear you can give them is you can give them Asphyx shells to slightly improve their combi bolters by making them shredding. Don't take it, because you're just wasting the points. You don't have enough firepower to make your points back on what you're going to spend. Or you can take their Ether Fire plasma weapons. Now, the problem with the Ether Fire plasma weapons is they are a worse version of a regular plasma weapon, but you can get +2 strength on them if you pass a psychic check. Oh, okay, a strength 8 plasma cannon sounds good. Yes, the problem is, though, it's only rending 6+, and you don't get to make a psychic check because you're a Dreadnought, not an infantry soldier. You don't have the ability to make a psychic check, so you get nothing from cults, and you get nothing from your Legion war gear. You get nothing from being a Thousand Sun. Someone would be better off allying another army in which actually has a bonus than taking Thousand Suns Dreadnoughts. That's how bad they are written this edition. But that's okay, that's Thousand Suns as a whole. We did a whole video on that explains the problem in depth and solutions. Sons of Horus. When you get charged, the enemy counts as 1 less strength against you in close combat. I think that speaks for itself. It is almost as good as the Iron Hands trait, but do remember it's going to be for that first turn of combat when you charge or are charged. So you need to get the most out of it right then and there, versus the Iron Hands who are going to just benefit all game long. Now, the good thing for the Sons of Horus, by the way, rules as written, that gets reset if someone else charges into the combat a turn later. So, because you got charged that turn, oh look, I get that bonus again. Yeah, it's stupid, but that's again how they wrote it. You may hear me saying that it's stupid, but that's how they wrote it. Come up a lot. That's Dreadnoughts this edition. So, then Word Bearers. The leadership buff is inconsequential. Okay? But there are ways of getting corruption on units, which are good, and you can take Word Bearers plasma weapons. Word Bearers plasma weapons actually have the advantage of being pinning. So that is advantageous if you use it wisely. So I do recommend that, but only on the units that can really take advantage of it, which is, of course, the Castraferrum and the Contemptor. They're the ones who get the plasma weapons, and it's only a mild upgrade, so again, they're not going any higher than a green. Yeah. Salamanders. The -1 to wound them with Plasma, Volkite, Flamer is never going to come up. The -1 to wound them with melters will occasionally come up, but the thing that's most terrifying to a Contemptor Dreadnought, well, the two most terrifying things, are Thunderhammers and Melter Bombs. And Melter Bombs do not count as melter weapons for the Salamander's Legion trait, so they are just instant death to your Dreadnoughts. What are you benefiting here? Okay, you can take Dragon's Breath Flamer weapons on your Dreadnoughts. So your Flamer weapons get upgraded to be a +1 strength and AP 4. Ooh, that's going to win games. No, they're just adequate. They don't get enough of a benefit from this war gear to go anywhere. At least it's not a flat downgrade like Thousand Suns, where they get absolutely nothing out of it. Raven Guard, rerolling 1s to wound the turn you charge helps Contemptors and helps Leviathans. It's not a +1 to wound, it's a reroll 1s. Well, most of the time you're probably only not wounding on 1s, therefore you basically are rerolling everything. That's really good. Is it great? No, definitely not. You don't have enough attacks to make it great, but it is a significant buff to them. The Deredeo, on the other hand, is never going to see close combat unless something has gone horribly wrong, and even then it's only got like 2 kicking attacks at strength 7. What's it going to kill? What is rerolling 1s ever going to give it? It's useless, absolutely useless what this Legion trait gives to it. What it needed was something like Shrouding. Would have been really, really good here. Again, Raven Guard just need a complete rewrite of their Legion rules, and there's a video explaining that on the channel. Very, very fair video, I want to say. And the Alpha Legion. Everyone benefits equally in the Alpha Legion army from the 2 inches counting further back. But of course, Contemptors and Leviathans are almost always going to have a melee weapon, so they're almost always going to be too close to that to the enemy for that 2 inches buffer zone to trigger. On the other hand, the Leviathan and the Castraferrum, which I don't know why I wrote a 4 there, it's a 3. I'll just fix that. On the other hand, these particular units are so far away from the action that, yeah, you can sit back far enough that it will often trigger. So it is a buff to them in that regard, but again, it's not the biggest buff in the world, so it's only going up a little bit on the chart. Then we get to unique units. Okay, we're getting there. It's a lot to this video, but we're about 1 hour in and we're in the tail end now. So, Incendious. It's a Contemptor Dreadnought, which has special shredding version of Contemptor close combat weapons, and a 1-use only jump pack, which you can use either as a 1-use only jump pack or to deep strike in. Most people are going to pick the free deep strike in, and most people are going to go from the shredding hands to regular Gravis Power Fists, which you can take for free, and then you can upgrade those to have assault cannons in its hands anyway. So instead of strength 7, I think it is brutal 2 shred, something like that. I don't know. Never play it. Nobody ever plays it that way. They always just take the Gravis Power Fist because brutal 3 attacks with all the benefits thereof, and of course assault cannon fingers. So they're good. They benefit a lot from the Legion traits, and of course if you went the Rite of War, like Day of Revelation, something like that, then you're going to go up to blue tier because you can deep strike in with the Day of Revelation and benefit from things like the increased weapon skill on top of all of that. The Thousand Sons of Sirion. It's a 2. Because it can... Here's the thing. It suffers from the same problem that Thousand Sons in general do with their independent characters, which is that you can cast a decent psychic power, something like you don't get to use reactions. If you do that, the other person is going to be really annoyed because you're removing a fundamental game mechanic from them, but you get to keep yours. That's not fair. It's underhanded, and therefore people don't like it happening to them. It is a part of the game, but they don't enjoy it. On the other hand, if you take a weaker psychic discipline, then you're wasting the points and potential of the unit, and you're not going to enjoy doing that. So Psychers in general are in a bad place for this sort of reason across the board, but it's exemplified here to the nth degree. And it's made worse by the fact that you are forced into taking a force weapon on this Dreadnought, and the force weapon just doesn't have the damage output that makes it worth it over a regular Gravis Power Fist. So if you want the ability to cast a Telepathy Psychic Discipline on your Assyrion, okay, cool. But keep in mind, you're going to be stuck with one gun arm, so you're not going to be able to do anything like divination shenanigans with a million shots or anything like that. That's not going to happen. Your close combat weapon is not that great, so you're probably just going to want to take a Power Fist anyway, in which case you just wish you had a 2 Power Fists to begin with. And you're not even going to benefit from something like Biomancy because, well, unfortunately, you're locked into fixed stats for the strength on your weapons. So again, it's you take a Psychic Discipline which annoys people and you're cheesing the system, or do you not do that so people enjoy their games with you, but now you're having a miserable time because you don't get to enjoy your units. That is the Thousand Suns in a nutshell, and that is the Assyrian Dreadnought. Then the Marigal. Now the Marigal is a corrupted unit type, and it falls into its own separate set of categories, which really it ends up being the same as a Dreadnought in most areas. So just picture a Contemptor Dreadnought with a couple extra hull points. It's far faster with Pathfinder and the ability to move through terrain than a regular Dreadnought is. It has higher weapon skill, going up to 6, and a reduced ballistic skill, going down to 3. It has similar, it has the Legion plasma weapons, which are, they are the Legion's plasma weapons, which is fine, they're adequate, and they do the job. But again, reduced ballistic skill. You are not going to want to be taking the las cannon option because your ballistic skill 3, like I said, that means 50% of your shots going to miss. You're probably going to just take the close combat weapons. Now, the close combat weapons it has, well, it's got Rampage, which is good, and your fists are only Brutal 2, not Brutal 3 like regular Dreadnoughts, but they are Murderous Strike 5+. That's really, really good. And you're a -1 strength and toughness aura for every Psyker, Demon, or Corrupted unit within 6 inches of you. So, again, Thousand Suns players, anyone who's using a Librarian in a unit, things like that, they become absolutely terrified being around this thing. This is one of the only units that can really make Callous Typhon and an absolutely pimped out Death Shroud squad absolutely terrified. So it has its place, and its place is being a melee monster. If you're not being that melee monster, you're really not getting the full use out of it. So I think that's really probably the only way to go with it as far as the unit goes. And yeah, you can give it the plasma weapon, I guess, and that's how it's modeled coming from Forgeworld, but just convert the arm, okay? It's just not powerful enough on its own, I think. The unit's designed to rapidly close the distance and mess with the enemy, take your shooting elsewhere in the Force, okay? And that's why, of course, it has all these stars against it. Just beware, though, Force weapons, psychic powers, they are all instant death against you. And although they can't instant death you, because you do have that pretty much the same rule as the Automatic Deflector, you take D3 wounds instead, and you have a 5+ invul, and you have a 5+, it will not die. By the way, Salamanders, I didn't mention, have a 6+, it will not die. It will not go off. Ask me how I know. So that, very rapidly, we got through that in about 5 minutes, brings us to characters. And they're all over the place. Why? Well, Telemachus is god tier. Rillinor is not. Why isn't Rillinor? Because he is, I kid you not, a regular Contemptor Dreadnought, but with the Crusader special rule, and he costs 250 points. Don't take him. He's just play a regular Contemptor, call it Rillinor, and it will be just as good on the battlefield. And you'll save like 75 points. Telemachus is weapon skill 6 and has Hatred of Traitors, I believe it is. So, yeah, makes him really, really strong because, well, he's always got the bonus that the Space Wolves have, just hard baked into him, as well as having an assault cannon, which means he's got a lot of shots, which means he's going to trigger the Ultramarines special ability with the Ultramarines Legion units hitting other things. So yeah, that's really, really good. And then Cassian Dracos, the former Legion Master of the Salamanders and a personal bugbear of mine. So, backstory here, the fluff is that this is a one-of-a-kind Dreadnought, the only one in the galaxy, handmade by Vulcan, the blacksmith Primarch, who is renowned for making some of the greatest war gear in the Imperium. The only people who can claim to be on his level are basically Ferrus Manus and maybe Perturabo. And this, in previous editions, was represented by an Armor 14 immune to basically everything Dreadnought. You couldn't hurt it with melter weapons, you couldn't use the Lance rule against it. I think it was immune to Haywire as well. It was really, really, really good. But didn't have a lot of damage output, which balanced it. It was very resilient, but not very aggressive, which is sort of the Salamanders in a nutshell. They're a resilient legion. Then this edition happened, and I hate to say it because these videos are trying to be very, even-handed in their tone, but very bad writing happened because they took all of that lore, that background, and all the previous rules, threw them out the window, and then made him into the same stats as a Castraferrum Dreadnought, right down to having the same ferromantic deflector, and his two weapons are just Gravis Power Fists with inbuilt Dragon's Breath Flamers. They don't even have the melter gun option anymore. It's just Dragon's Breath Flamers built into Gravis. So you can make this exact model out of a regular Castraferrum, and that's going to cost you 125 points, or you can pay 310 points for Cassian Dracos. No takers? Yeah, I didn't think so. If you are a Salamanders player and you love Cassian Dracos and you want to run him in your army, I'm totally down with it. I get it. Don't use him. Use a Leviathan Dreadnought. Give it a pair of Siege Cores or a Siege Core Siege Drill combo if you want to be a bit more gamey, with the inbuilt melters, and give him flamers on the chest, and don't give him the Phosphex Discharger, and ta-da! You have made a far more resilient, far better Cassian Dracos for far, far cheaper in points. Why? Oh, and even though he was the Praetor who led the Legion up until the discovery of Vulcan, he's only weapon skill 5 as well. So, yay, Telemachus is better there as well. Anyway, that's it. That's the Legion Dreadnoughts in a nutshell. It is a lot to go through, a lot to cover off on. I do appreciate that this video has taken some time, but you have to understand there's a lot of weird glitches and mechanics that are in there. Blood Angels, yeah, we can have assault cannon nipples across the board. How good is that? It's great. And then you'll get to something like the Deredeo and be like, oh, but that's a twin-linked heavy bolter, not a heavy bolter, so rules is written, you can't upgrade it. Or a twin-linked heavy flamer, and rules is written, you can't upgrade that to an assault cannon because it only covers non-twin-linked weapons. And these are the things that drive you nuts when it comes to writing these lists. And unfortunately, this is where we make mistakes, because all of this is off the top of my head, okay? And you'll hear me second-guess myself throughout the video, because I'm trying really hard to memorize all the rules for the edition so that you can be a bit of a walking encyclopedia as such. And I have rules. I've been playing since 2nd edition 40k, okay? 1993, 94 was my start. And, hey, that's 30 years this year, geez. But as a really little kid, too, I was in primary school. And I get confused because the same rule has many iterations over the years, and you start to go, well, hang on, that rule doesn't work quite that way this edition. And it does get confusing. So if there are mistakes, as per the last video, I will do a separate video to address them. Just put them in the comments below. I did remember the Death Guard to talk about them this time, so that's a positive. But yeah, there's a lot of really, really weird interactions in here, and I've just got to try and remember them. And what I should have done, if I was a more professional channel, was written a set of notes beforehand. But I feel like having a set of notes before you know, it's not coming from the heart. I guess it's kind of the way I say it. It's too clinical, too analytical, and it's like, if I'm just going to read a script of notes that I've really written that cover all of this, why aren't I just releasing it as a PDF file or something? Why am I talking about it, creating a video content? It doesn't quite gel with me. Maybe I'm just weird and overthinking it, but that's sort of the way I see it. And yeah, I think this is a good way of doing the charts, you know, going forward. I like this approach because I'm trying to tell you what the thinking is behind it and justify my decisions instead of just, you know, making a video saying this is crap, this sucks, which is so easy to do with Games Workshop because they do make a lot of bad calls, you know. And I have had to say, this is bad, this is badly written, this is poorly written, you know, Thousand Suns, Cassian Dracos. Yeah, it happens, unfortunately. But the goal is to be informative because, like I say, people are not made of money. You're going out there and you're going to purchase one of these units and you go, geez, I only have so many dollars to spend, or euros, pounds, you know, freedom seeds, whatever it is your currency is in your local area. Fine. What are you going to spend your money on? And if you are essentially throwing the money away because you're making a really bad call because you're not informed, I don't want to see that, because I want you to enjoy your hobby and get models that you enjoy playing with. And that's what this video is there for. It's to help you with that. And it may seem a little contradictory, sort of ranking things in a way by power level, but well, at the end of the day, if it doesn't perform, are you going to enjoy using the unit? And I would wager that for some units, yes. But for the majority of the time, it'll be no. Because there's nothing worse, and I think I can speak for everyone here, than you build a brand new model, you're really proud of it, you know, you've put a lot of time and effort into it, it's your new favorite thing, you know, it's your best paint job you've ever done. You put it on the table, and the first turn of the first game you play, it dies and never did anything. Isn't that the most infuriating, depressing situation to be in? Well, I didn't want that to happen. I don't want that to happen to any of you. So that's part of why I'm creating these videos. And like I said, walking you through the why. And hopefully, I mean, this is really hopefully here, someone at Games Workshop actually watches these videos and FAQs based on them, because I shouldn't have to go through the process that doesn't work, which is sending an email to them, because that never works. They never actually FAQ or get back to things in a timely fashion in a way that they should. We know this is the case because it's been this long into Heresy and there are still so many unanswered questions. It's just not on their radar. They'll happily rewrite all of the different factions for 40k and put out indexes at the start of an edition, and yet Heresy, with like 4 factions, has to wait years for that sort of effort to be put in. And that is just the state of things. So hopefully someone comes along, looks at this video and goes, okay, these are fair points that are being raised. Why is Gravis Melter battery on Contemptor Dreadnought 5 points and 4 times the firepower of the 20-point multi-melter on a Castraferrum? And that doesn't seem quite right, does it? But no, that's not what they do. Anyway, that's it from me. I'm Mac with the Outer Circle. I'm going to go have a drink before I get too salty. Thank you all so very much for watching. I really appreciate it. And thoughts and comments below. I'll see you on the next one.